about the Mandela Effect and spiritual warfare. Now, first we're going to start with the Mandela Effect, and we're going to synchronize it in how the government is using the CERN machine to cause the Mandela Effect in their spiritual warfare. That in regards to the spiritual warfare that they've been waging on humanity. So with that being said, let's get into the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect is the alleged effect of events in time, particularly the past, that are being altered in over 50% of the world population. Not just your neighbor. The world population is having memories or neurological recollections of different events or things taking place. Now I'll give you a prominent example. And if you don't know what the Mandela Effect is, if this video is just putting you onto it, you can go research Mandela Effect alterations. They got a whole entire list of shit that's been altered from the past, from cereal boxes to whatever you could think of. How you spell, a lot of logos, everything. Things that have been altered, but half the world remembers it other than what we are seeing now. Now I'm going to give y'all the biggest one. Star Wars. The first Star Wars movie. Darth Vader says to Luke Skywalker at the end, Luke, I am your father. Yes? You agree? Yes. That's what we all know he says for a fact. Hands down. I didn't even watch the whole goddamn movie and I know he say that. Now why is this important? Now, when you look at any Star Wars movie, including the original copy, he says, no, I am your father. Go look this shit up. Now Darth Vader is saying, no, I am your father. So now what's being alleged by the scientific community is that somebody's going back in time, altering events. And now we are experiencing them in this day and time in what is called the Mandela Effect. Now they're going into the past and the future. And I'm going to let y'all know, family, that this is true. And I'm getting ready to prove it because I prove everything that come out of my mouth. But I want y'all to know, if y'all don't think Europeans are playing with the fabric of the cosmos, you will know. Not think, you will know that they are now. So with that being said, how are these motherfuckers going back in time and altering reality as we know it? Easy. They have what is called a pulse tube dilution refrigerator. Now, what is the meaning of a pulse tube dilution refrigerator, family? Pulse is any electromagnetic wave, heat signature, or any frequency module that is being emitted. So that's a pulse. So in order to be a pulse, or for something to have a pulse, it has to basically emit heat or any electromagnetic waves. Now, tube is in the title because the heat and electromagnetic waves and quantum frequencies are being channeled through a tube into a dilution chamber. Dilution means to weaken. And then after that, it's being controlled in by what you would call a cubic cube, spelled Q-U-B-I-T, into a refrigerated compartment. Now, the definition of refrigerator means to control the heat. So, pulse tube dilution refrigerator. Electromagnetic waves being controlled or manipulated through a tube, weakened, and then exported in a calculated manner through a refrigerated state. Why? I'll tell you why. Because what the qubit chip does, and to give you a mental description or depiction of the qubit chip is about the size of your thumbnail. And what this does is this actually merges parallel frequencies at their nexus point. Now, if you don't know what a nexus is, let me give you an example. A nexus is the point where two lines cross. So let's say my two fingers was racing down the road, and then they do an X, and then they go back to being in their path. And then they do another X, then they go back to to continuing down their path. Each of those little X marks the spot points where they crossed will be considered the nexus point. Now, what the qubit chip is doing is it's creating nexus points. It's bonding quantum material. Now, when we do, I would need for y'all to think how deep I'm talking when I say the fabric. I'm not talking about atoms, okay? I'm talking about what's behind the motherfucking atom. So, atoms are held together by what's called gluons. G-L-U-O-N-S. So, just like glue holds things together in a more dense materialized state, atoms are held together too by a more subatomic glue particle. Now, we're talking about what's behind that. So, if you want to know how deep I'm talking, go watch my video, Unified Field and Solar Ascension. And when I show the unified field, I'm talking about the fabric of the universe where everything comes out of. That's what I'm talking about. The cubic cube is actually taking these parallel magnetic frequencies and merging them together. So now why is this important? Because they're merging realities or dimensions. Now we're talking about merging dimensions. You got to remember, dimensions are just angles. Dimension on a physical scale or dimension on a scale of reality is angles of light. So now let me break down how the qubit chip is able to do this. In the refrigerator section of the pulse tube dilution refrigerator, it has a mechanism composed in it where it freezes or cools. Let's say cools the qubit chip to almost exactly 0 degrees. So now this dilution refrigerator is actually cold enough. It's when you compare its temperature, it's actually 100 times colder than interstellar space. Now why is this important, and why would this chamber need to be this cold? Because when we're dealing with the unified field, the only way to get precise access to that field is to actually slow down reality itself. Now I'm gonna give y'all a mental description before I go into the science. Have you ever seen that movie Wanted with Angelina Jolie, and they got that little yarn thing, and whatchamacallit, and he tell the man, the white man, when he be training him, reach in there, and there was something in there he had to grab, and the yarn thing was shooting a metal let's say metal objects across back and forth. And remember, he kept putting his hand in there, and it kept fucking his hand up, and it kept stabbing him. And then when he finally focused in, the metal objects seemed to slow down, and he was able to go in and be precise and grab exactly what he wanted. That's what they're using the dilution refrigerator to do. Now I'm gonna tell you how. Molecules, right? If you don't know about molecules, quick science lesson. Gas, liquid, solid are all determined by heat signatures, aka degrees. So when it's 80 degrees outside, that just means that the sun is 80 degrees latitude from wherever you are at that specific latitude and longitude point on planet Earth. So once the sun becomes 32 degrees below the horizon, hence degrees, we're not saying, see, temperature is measured by degrees. Physical molecules begin to freeze. Now why is this important? A gas, an object only becomes a gas when the sun is at a certain degree. So because it's emitting so much heat frequency or electromagnetic frequency on that object that the molecules are far apart, they're vibrating. Once the sun goes down to, let's say, a medium state of degree or a medium state of temperature, the molecules are not close enough to become a solid, but they're not far enough to be a gas, so they're in a liquid state. So instead of being far apart, they're almost combusted. So now, as the sun goes to 32 degrees or below, the object is so far out of the heat spectrum or the electromagnetic wave spectrum that the molecules begin to almost become non-existent and still. So they become a solid. Hence, all life is manifested and kept in motion by the sun. If the sun ever went away, all life would stop as we know it. This is why, because the sun determines reality. So now, freezing, if there was a spectrum past freezing, it would be what the fuck we call death or space or voidness. So now, why is this important? The goddamn qubit chip is taking molecules, particularly atoms, and stopping them to the point where there's almost no such fucking thing as reality as we know it. They're taking it to almost 0 degrees. Remember, 0 degrees is void of life. That means it's over. So they freezing this, they taking this motherfucker to almost 0 degrees to where the atom is barely vibrating, and there they have a precise, accurate, let's say, shot at the electromagnetic wavelength of the unified field, which is creating the atom. And they're grabbing it with the qubit chip, and then they're grabbing other points in time and space with the qubit chip, and merging the motherfuckers, and they're merging dimensions. So now once they merge the dimension, what they're doing with the CERN machine, once they merge the dimension, they're altering everything that happens in that time and space by causing two frequencies to let's say have a chaotic interaction with each other. So it's just like if I took two wires and I chewed the two ends and I went to touch them, they would spark and cause chaotic events. This is what they're doing with parallel universes. So they got shit happening on our planet, and we don't know if they grabbing shit from Jupiter, Saturn, we don't know. But our planet is being affected by the shit that they're doing beyond the subatomic level. This is on a quantum level. I want y'all to know how deep these motherfuckers is altering shit.